Welcome back to the channel, everybody. This week we're going to be doing a shop vlog on this next Tacoma that we're building. This thing's almost ready to get pulled apart and get painted so we can get it back together and start knocking out every other little detail that's left on it. So we're going to stick this thing on the rack, get it up in the air, pull it apart, go over what we have left for the day before we can pull it apart for paint and get to work. So back here on the rear of the truck, we have only got a couple things left to weld. We got some limit strap tabs to weld. We got our bump stop pads on the axle to weld, and I think that's about it. Everything else is done. For the front of the truck, we got a couple things, but nothing too major. Just need to finish capping these pieces right here on the bump stop gussets, and we need to mount some limit straps up front. And I think that's all the fab for the front of this thing. So we got the limit straps done, bump stops are all boxed in. It's time for us to pull this thing apart, get everything out of the way, finish weld it, put some paint on it, and go home. So that's everything welded, cleaned up, it's prepped for paint. We're gonna slap a coat of paint on this thing and go home. Day two, only about a half day today. Got a couple things going on, so I'm not gonna be able to work all day on this thing. What we are gonna get done today is the rear end. We're gonna finish weld everything, prep it, paint it. We're gonna go ahead and paint all of our links. Everything that we need to get this thing back together. The goal is to get that finished today so that tomorrow we can start bright and early and put this thing together. Really excited to see it with some paint on it because it is butt ugly right now. All right, it's morning of day three. Excuse me. Shop's a mess. Kind of turned the whole place into a paint booth, but whatever. Put some acetone on the ground, take care of it. Today we're gonna put the front end back together, get as far as we can there. We still have to prep the rear axle and paint it. It's almost done. I just need to disassemble it to get the wire wheel into a couple spots. So we're gonna handle that today as well and see about ending the day with putting the rear end together, or possibly that'll be tomorrow. So we're gonna link set to length. Everything's dialed, ready to go. We'll tighten the jam nuts when it's in the car. The last thing we're gonna do before we hang these things, and it's a very important step that I have learned the importance of the hard way, is you always wanna put some anti-seize on your misalignment spacers where it's stainless on stainless, because otherwise they will not want to come out. So we got the front end all back together. Everything's bolted tight, jam nuts are tight, everything just got torqued. I think we're going to rebuild the knuckles on this thing. We're going to put the steering back on it, and then we'll throw some gears in this thing. But first, onto the rear. So we got the rear end of this thing all back together. It's about time for me to go home. I'm gonna come back in tomorrow, tighten everything up, put a torque wrench on a couple things, make sure this thing is ready to go as far as bolts, jam nuts, all that stuff. Then we're gonna go ahead and start on some gears. Day 4. Rear end of the truck is all bolted together. I got the brakes on it. I got everything on it, and it's time to do some gears in it. But first, I'm gonna put some new ball joints in our front knuckles to get that handled, get those bolted on the car. That way, literally it's gears, lockers, axle shafts, put the front hubs on and brakes on, and this thing's a roller again. So that is our goal for today and probably tomorrow. So now it's time to do the rear end. We went ahead and took everything out of it. This is a 373 gear set with an open carrier. Cleaned the living shit out of the inside of the diff because it was disgusting. And what's going in is a Yukon Grizzly locker, a 538 gear set, and we'll be using a Yukon setup kit. I love this Grizzly locker. I've got it in my truck. It works great on the street. And once you get in the rocks, it really locks all the way. There's nothing worse than putting what you think is going to work in the back expecting your truck to lock the rear end once you get up in the tough stuff, and having an open diff. It'll get you stuck, it'll get you in trouble, and really just kind of piss you off. So we're gonna stick this in, then it's onto the front. So we got everything in. We're checking backlash right now. Tolerance on this Sterling 10 1/4 diff is 6 to 10 thousandths of backlash. We're sitting right about 7.5, which is plenty good for me. So I'm gonna go ahead and torque these cap bolts and call it a night. I'm still waiting on my pinion flange for this thing, so I'm not able to put the pinion seal in. I'm not able to Loctite everything up there, but it's good to go. It's ready to run, minus that stuff. So sometime next week when that shows up, I'll get that done. Day 5, we went ahead and checked our pattern this morning just to make sure everything looked good. Got our Yukon diff cover on, a little bit of silicone on the sealing surface. Time to button this bad boy up. Looks like a bomb went off in this place. It is a mess. And Frank, what are you doing? You just big chilling? That's a good boy. Front end time. Got the diff cover off this thing, cleaned up the sealing surface on the front of it where the cover is going to go. It's time to pull this thing out and get the new stuff in. This front end is going to be getting a 538 gear set to match the rear. We're going to be running a Toyota flange on this one, and this thing's getting an ARB 35 spine air locker. We like the selectable lockers up front, just makes things simple, keeps it nice for when you're driving it on the road and four-wheel drive in the snow. You have a nice open diff, it's predictable, it doesn't push the front end when you don't want it to, but you also have the option to have a fully locked diff whenever you press that button. That'll do. Joint that was down here a second ago.
Money into everything.
So we're putting the pinion shim in the new pinion gear. So what I like to do is I like to take what is in the old setup out. And typically when I'm making a drop from like a 373 to a 538, I add like 1/8 of what is pre-existing in the diff and start there. So right here we've got 33 thousandths. I'm gonna make my life easy and just set it to 40. Put that together, put the bearing on it, and then we can take care of the carrier. So like a lot of you guys, I'm pretty self-taught on everything I do, but I've obviously picked up tips and tricks here and there. This is one of them. I remember watching some stuff about doing gears and a guy talking about running a file over the top of the ring gear, just in case there's any burrs or high spots. So you can knock those down to where your ring gear spins nice and true. May not do much, but I feel like that extra 20 seconds or whatever time you spend doing that is not going to hurt anything. front diff all cleaned out. And now I'm just running a magnet around all the crevices. See if there's any extra stuff. We can pick it up and get it out of there. Because sometimes brake cleaning the rag doesn't do it all. It's a little looser than I'd like, but there's no slop, which means that it's touching, there's just not enough load on the bearing. So I'm gonna take 5 thou out of this and see what it does. Mud flap's pissing me off. Much better. That's perfect. Got some backlash. Time to see what it does. So I got the diff in for the second time. I had to give it some more pinion depth. I actually added 30 thou pinion depth. And now I'm gonna check my pattern. I checked my backlash already. It's at 8 thou. I haven't checked tolerance. Pretty sure it's 6 to 10 on these. Don't quote me, but if you come down here and take a look, you can see that our backlash is right there at 8. So let's roll it around. Check the pattern, see how our pinion depth looks. Little on the deep side. Don't know if it's deep enough to bother me. I'm gonna check it in a couple other spots and see how I feel, but it looks pretty good. Looks pretty happy with that. I think we're gonna send it. Now that the pinion seal is on, I'm putting some silicone on the splines for the pinion flange. Don't need a ton here either, just enough to get everything covered. I like to roll it around a couple times, make sure I didn't miss anything. And let the actual top of this thing be the piece that keeps everything clean. Put a little bit of assembly lube on here so that seal doesn't go on dry. Last thing we're doing is putting some red Loctite on there. You may notice as well that I've been using the old pinion nut the whole time I was setting this thing up. The reason why is I like to save the lock nut all the way till the end. That way you're only taking it, sorry, you're not even taking it off. You're just putting it on once and it stays there. You're not going on and off and on and off and actually wearing this thing out and making it lose that bit of grip that it has, because this thing obviously has an important job. And because we're running a solid spacer, we don't have a crush sleeve to worry about, so we are really just gonna run this thing till it stops. That's that. Time to put the diff cover on and stick the rest of this thing together. That's it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, leave us a comment, whatever you can do to help us grow the channel. And go ahead and let us know in the comments what you think of today's video. I know this is our first kind of shop vlog of us just going through the day building trucks as opposed to being out wheeling. And we really just want to make content you guys like seeing. So if you like this, let us know. If you don't like it, let us know. Anything in the middle, just let us know. Thanks, guys.